Hello, everyone, and welcome to Vibration, where I empower individuals to speak their distinct truth, passions, and personal message on a global online stage. I'm your host, Michelle McDonald, passionate author, speaker, and entrepreneur. And tonight, I give a very special thank you to our show sponsor, Amber L, a Bahamian artisan skincare company that encourages you to nourish your everyday skin glow. When it comes to having digital access to wealth, this is every potential investor's dream. And living in a world that is full of never ending technology, it's a must. Tonight, I am proud to feature a familiar face in the Bahamian digital space, Mr. N. Fernando, who, in connection with our theme, Representation Matters, Faces of the Caribbean, we will discuss the topic of digital access to wealth building for Bahamians. Mr. N. Fernando is a young Bahamian visionary known for a fervent entrepreneurial spirit and a desire to leave people, places, things, and ideas better off than he met them. He has been making his mark in the digital space for nearly a decade, or half of his lifespan so far. He has immersed his vibrant mental energies and capable intellect in financial instruments trading, digital entrepreneurship, and other realms of cyberspace from the start of his teenage years. And then built his first app, Bobbing, at age 17 in 2015, and also co founded a Bahamian digital marketing agency. The latter, in addition to Brandy, Star Options Institute, and I Know Wealth, are examples of his more recent digital space and youth focused learning platform successes. Annan is delighted to share his skills and has taught over 1,000 fellow Bahamians how to trade indices and stock options, as well as operate comfortably in foreign exchange and financial marketplaces, helping scores of Bahamians start online businesses through the challenges of the COVID-19 era and set up international operations. And then also built a learning management system and an app for both platforms, while also launching a private alternative education platform that increasingly hosts hundreds of local and Caribbean region members. In addition, he's the business manager for 100 Media, an international media group that manages creators with over 45 million subscribers on YouTube and over 60 million on other social media platforms. And then continues to learn from his ever evolving digital space that there is always a way to achieve positive results. His commitment to representing the Bahamas on the international stage as one of its premier swimmers for the past 10 years has taught him the rigors of training and failure, and then treasures the benefits of learning and self development, and sees a future where he and other young Bahamians are among the giant givers of the future. And welcome to the stage tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, it is a pleasure. This is a topic that a lot of Bahamian young people are eager to find out about. They're always looking for the next opportunity, what is trending, what is out there. And also, some millennials, some boomers want to get into the digital space as well. So I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak with you one on one and share all of the tips and, of course, what Prospuh has for us. So let's dive into it. What was it about the digital sector that really sparked your interest and led you to being an entrepreneur?
So I guess for me and I guess my perspective about the whole entire digital space is that you see, even when I went off to college, even when I first started getting into, coding and also getting into trading and investing in general, you see how simple it is to kind of operate in a space that it has access to everybody. So I guess starting off in business, my whole entire thing was how do I move away from what's traditional and how do I find a space that allows me to be attached to the whole entire world rather than just here at home? And how do you have that vice versa where you attach the world to home, right? So you can offer both ends of the spectrum there. So I think that that whole entire perspective where I realized that the only way to be as scalable, the only way to impact as much people as possible was to be
Hmm.
in a digital space where you had access to the world and the world had access to you. So I kind of, I guess, went down that route of digital space because of the understanding that, hey, this is the only way forward. This is the future. This is the thing that everybody is going to be able to see what the Bahamas creates, and everybody would have access to the Bahamas. So that's kind of like why I went down that route.
I love that aspect of really bridging the gap and the fact that you recognize that we here in the Bahamas didn't necessarily have that, not something that we were able to understand and really be able to use right away. And you came up with a solution that really connects with how the world is nowadays. Everything is technology. We're always on our phones and our laptops. And so it's good to be able to kind of steer our minds away from things that can make us idle and
Yeah.
move it towards something that's a lot more progressive, especially when it comes to the Bahamas. So I really applaud you for thinking about your fellow Bahamians.
Yes. Always. I mean, like I tell people all the time, growing up in the environment, our culture has changed a lot, although we don't see it over the past 10 years. And when you look at our environment and where it is right now, a big importance is that people a lot more, and especially younger people, care so much about money, care so much about, you know, like materialistic things.
Mm-hmm.
Why we have social media, we have a lot of influence around us when it comes to that being held um, as a prominent thing in all of our lives now. But the reality behind it is like if you grow up in an environment where you don't give everybody a fair advantage, you have this space where over time it just ruins the economy and it ruins the environment more than we see right away. So for me, being able to provide solutions, provide inclusion, provide access, it gives not just people, because obviously we're not just in the Bahamas only, we're throughout the Caribbean, but it gives people that, you know, mentality. It gives people the drive to of ownership. And over time, the idea is that people understand ownership. We start thinking about scalable things. We start thinking about other
Mm-hmm.
different technologies and businesses and getting to understand things that we wouldn't have traditionally understood puts us as a whole, as an environment. So you get 50 people in specific countries to now start saying, hey, well, we should have these things in our countries. We kind of start fast tracking growth in our world. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
that's a very important skill and thing to have.
Yes, I absolutely agree, especially when it comes to having a certain level of accountability. I think that we treasure what we have more when we make ourselves accountable or have persons that make us accountable. And so having an app that really embraces that and encourages us to do that in a positive way is definitely the way to go. One aspect of what you stated I really appreciated was mindset. So, when it comes to wealth, this can be a bit of a taboo word for some Bahamians, for some Caribbeans, persons around the world. And it connects a lot with money mindset. So we've either grown up in a household where money was never discussed, or we get really lost into that social media world, as you stated, and we believe that so many people are living abundantly in wealth and prospering. And for us, we don't feel as though we can ever be wealthy, whatever wealthy means to us. But for most persons, it's money. And with money mindset, it's really kind of understanding like, what do you think about money? How do you see yourself? Do you have a healthy relationship with it? And these are the questions that we may have never thought we needed to ask. What is your perspective on the definition of wealth? And do you believe that everyone has the ability to achieve it?
Well, it's interesting. It's an interesting take on this, right? Because I'm probably going to go against what a lot of people would initially think that I would probably say, which is that, you know, if I'm talking to somebody in conversation, whether it's a man, whether it's a woman, I would say to that person, I would initially ask them when it comes to wealth, I would say, how would you describe wealth to your 5 to 10-year-old daughter or son or whatever it may be, right? And why I ask that is because the reality of what wealth is or what we think wealth is not truly what it is. You start understanding that when you start dealing with high net worth individuals, you start dealing with specific families that have accumulated large amount of what we look at and now call wealth. But wealth itself is a mindset. Wealth itself is a lifestyle. It's more, it has nothing to do with money. I tell people all the time, I said, well, if I take if you are in your deathbed or if you are in a hospital bed and you are blind, you're paralyzed, you can't move anything, you can't hear, you're deaf. If I give you $50 million, how useful is it? And the truth is, I mean, it's not useful at all, right? That person would be able to do anything with it. If it's just them, right? They themselves can't enjoy what that wealth would look like because they don't have access to doing anything with it. People have to start understanding that the mindset of what wealth is eating healthy, not stressing, buying
Mhm.
back your own time, being able to afford the things that you truly set out for yourself in terms of goals, hitting goals, being able to provide a life that you dream of for yourself. And that doesn't have to be $1 million life, right? Like when we talk a lot when we grow up, although like you said, you mentioned, which is true, we don't talk about financial or like money at the dinner table. We don't talk about it. Not parents don't talk about it with the kids, none of that, in most households on average, right? But if you look at something that a lot of people grow up in here, oh, I want to be financially free, right?
Yes, big
But
one.
what's interesting about that statement, two statements that really chop us down big time: financial freedom and passive income. What's true about financial statement is that financial, I mean, financial freedom. Financial freedom itself does not require a lot of wealth or money, as we would say.
Mm.
Financial freedom is something anybody can achieve. Anybody, the regular average person that is just living life can achieve financial freedom. The reality behind it is, let's just say I have a job that pays me $1,500 a month. I can learn how to have a skill that replaces that job because you're only really paid for skill or a body or mindset because somebody's paying you for that. Um, if I can figure out what that skill is that people are paying me for, or maybe even learn a different skill, I could find myself a job that pays me $1,500 a month, and I can go and live in Bali. I could go live in Asia somewhere. I could go live in Europe somewhere, and I have no thing tying me down, no bills, nothing. I own my life. I can move freely. I can travel the world every single month. And people don't think it's possible, but there are tons of people that travel the world that make $1,500 a month, right? Like, so the reality behind it is wealth itself is something that is a lot more beyond just money. It's the knowledge, it's seeking out ignorance, it's being
Mm.
able to not have something stress you out, it's being able to understand how important your time actually is, being able
Yeah.
to understand how to utilize your time to the fullest. Wealth is all the things that you have to go and seek out. Wealth has nothing to do with a cash value or money in the bank because all those things are irrelevant. You could have $50 million in the bank and tomorrow your bank account gets frozen. You can't, wealth is something that somebody can't take away from you.
I
So,
like that.
it's, and that's the difference between, what we're told regularly, the propaganda around what wealth is versus what actual wealth is to a family that's worth $500 million, right? Like, it has nothing to do with the money. It has everything to do with the mindset, mentality, access, relationships. Because you have people that have wealthy lifestyles that just have access to people, right?
True.
So, it's something that we have to kind of change the narrative on and the perspective on. Stop thinking that it has everything to do with, oh, I need millions of dollars and I need to live like this. You could literally have wealth, right? With half of that. And until people start understanding it's not about what you make, it's about what you keep.
Hmm.
When it comes to the money aspect of it, we'll always be in that constant cycle where everyone's trying to build wealth, but none of it actually matters.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. That was so well needed. As you stated, there's so many people that have this misconception about what wealth is. And so they find themselves on this hamster race of constantly going after this goalpost that's never ending, that they title wealth, not realizing that they can do it by just investing more in their relationships, networking. And as you stated, having access is truly all that you need if you strategize it correctly.
Yeah.
And sometimes if we just kind of stop and look back at our lives, we realize that we are already experiencing a certain level of wealth. And once we take money out of the equation, because it's not actually a part of it, we can really appreciate wealth in its fullness.
Yeah.
So, in speaking about the opportunity that you are providing for Bahamians and giving them access to building equity and wealth in a different sense, is your app Prospuh? Tell us about that and why it was important to really include the Bahamian angle in your concept.
So it's funny because, traditionally I knew that when I came into the market that I would be going against the norms of what we stand for. Although, mind you, you'll see every single week we talk about fintech, like every single week, but we don't have like actual fintech companies, or in my personal opinion. That's just my personal opinion. People will look at it differently. I think we have software companies that come off as financial services companies, but they're not because they're software companies. But that's just my tangent, right? But traditionally, we don't have a lot of fintech companies in our environment. I
Mhm.
personally thought about not being a part of the Bahamas at all and just servicing the rest of the Caribbean because I knew that it would be a true challenge to really bring it up in our country. But I actually wanted the challenge, so I went after it. But for me, I grew up my whole entire life watching people around me, watching my parents work hard, watching my friends' parents work hard, just seeing people in general, having conversations with people. And you realize that people put their whole entire lives into careers and then they never own anything. The majority of us that, have a decent life growing up, or, come from a specific background, or whatever, not. No one's handing you anything because no one has anything or owns anything to hand you.
Yes.
So my mom, who may have worked 20 years at a company, still owns nothing, right?
Mhm.
And my dad, who may have worked 35 years at a company, still owns nothing and has nothing to pass to me because he has no ownership. And I tell people all the time, we have to start understanding that the true investment in ourselves is fact of not owning a business, not having a side hustle, not being a solo entrepreneur, um, not being a business owner, but being an investor. At the
Yes.
end of the day, the person that makes the most amount of money in any single situation will never be the business owner, unless that business owner is the equity holder as the investor. But will never be the business owner. The will never be the solopreneur. And very rare now is there are some people that are doing exceptionally well because of the digital space and that owning your own business, but they're also their own investors, right? So
Mhm.
you make the most amount of money across the board, always being an investor. So I think for me, imagine now we have a company, whereas I may be myself. Like for example, we put on an email, not an email, I think a private thing in one of our closed Facebook group, right? And I thought it was interesting because it was saying that if you put $1,000 into Amazon when it first started, that's like 200 and something thousand dollars today, or 180 something thousand dollars today. And you may, ask yourself like, and I was just having this conversation yesterday. I was saying that there's a guy that invested $5,000 into Uber when they first started, and when Uber IPO'd, that $5,000 was worth $25 million, right? Like when you
Right.
think about things like that, right? The reality behind it is that the true value is in purchasing yourself. And what does that mean? Is like if you
Mhm.
work a 9 to 5, for example, nothing against it, um, because I work 17 hours a day on average, honestly. But if you work a 9 to 5, you are somebody else's passive income, right? Now,
Mm.
let's just imagine while you are working, you're able to purchase like somebody else's passive income, which means that you now can become an investor. So yeah, I'm not working at Amazon, but if I buy Amazon, I'm putting money into a company, I'm becoming an investor in a company, and that's allowing me to purchase the 1.2 million employees that they have, their manpower, their skill sets, their mindsets, the company's assets. I'm investing into all of that. And that's working now for me. So investing gives you a vehicle where you, even if you have a job, even if you have your own business, it allows money to constantly now go to work for you, and fight against the things that we don't see, like inflation, hidden fees, and everything. I did a podcast about this. I never put it out, right? And I one of the big things that I said is I was like, you don't make money. Like the only people that make money in an environment, typically the two big people in an environment like ours,
Hmm.
the government and the banks. The
Yeah.
government makes money because the government's charging everybody money on top of their money, which means that the government don't have to do anything, but they can collect their VAT. VAT last year was $1.2 billion. That's a lot of money in our environment, right? Um, so the government making $1.2 billion doing nothing, right? The banks are making billions of dollars just collecting fees and grabbing $5 service fees out of everybody's accounts every single month, right? Like the reality behind it is that you don't make money, and there's different types of ways to making money. So you have to understand now what it is to what type of income that you do have. There's different types of income, and then
Hmm.
you have to be able to break down your own income. So for me, being able to provide that income, whereas you are now investing into assets that you say, okay, well, I may not be able to buy real estate, but I could purchase a real estate investment trust, right? Um, or I may not be able to purchase fixed income myself because I don't have $10,000 or $1,000 to buy um, and subscribe to them. So put $100 into bonds, for example. Or hey, I believe in a company, right? I'm gonna purchase, $100 worth of this company every single month because I think this company is worth something and is going to be worth something years from now. Just like Nvidia, for example, right? Like Nvidia was a company that was worth nothing. Now it's worth almost $500 a share. So if you're purchasing that at a dollar, and you purchase $1,000 of it, you've done pretty well, right? Like, so I mean, just the reality of how people perceive it. My whole entire thing was being able to provide an environment where, any and everybody had access to financial products and can get in the game. You have an environment where you're focused on growing your money, but by focusing on growing your money, by getting educated, you're now creating an environment in the Bahamas where people understand what or try to start understanding ownership and understanding the importance of ownership. So that
Hmm.
was a big goal with that.
I love it. And I really like how you gave alternatives when it came to investing because a lot of times we think that real estate is, while it's very important and it does upgrade in price over time, we stay
Yeah.
fixated on it, not recognizing that we can start today with an alternative method, something that is
Oh,
still an investment and gives back.
I am big on that, and my first podcast episode is about that. Real estate, we're big on real estate because it's the only thing that we understand. It comes from a sense of ignorance, right? Like why I say that is you can take anybody, no matter how well they do, no matter how bad they do, you could take anybody from high school, right? If they can't do math or if they're the best person in math, anybody could understand what a duplex is. Anybody, straight across the board, anybody could tell you what a duplex is. Not anybody could sit around and tell me what fixed income alternatives is, though. So the reality behind it is people think that real assets in most cases are the better investment. But in my opinion, unless you are in the right climate, right time, unless everything lines up, it's probably not the best option for anybody. Um, and there's so much ways that you can break that down, but the reality behind it is the reason why people like real estate and invest in real estate is because it's the only thing that they understand. They don't understand bonds. They don't understand equities. They don't understand alternatives. They don't understand anything else other than, all right, if I get a triplex, I got three people paying me. If I get 15 units, I got 15. Nah, no one's looking at phantom interest, anything. They're not looking at what happens if the roof go in, you don't have insurance for it, what happens to opportunity cost. Like I said to somebody the other day, I said, hey, look, you know, buying a home for, $100,000 50 years ago sounds cool, but $100,000 50 years ago put in the S&P 500 is $4.7 million a day. That's selling for $500,000 today. That's cool, man. That's nothing, right? Like it sounds great. My Grammy bought a home for 100K, and now it's 500. And I would sound way more cooler saying, "Hey, my dad left me $100,000 worth of S&P 500 shares from 50 years ago, but it's worth $4.8 million today." I think that the level of what we understand and how we look at inflation is kind
Mm-hmm.
of skewed in our minds because we don't truly understand it in our environment. But at the same time, too, it's so much propaganda around it that everybody has been thrown into home ownership. Home ownership is success and all these different things. But it is definitely the furthest thing away from success. It gives you a peace of mind. I agree. But I mean, I tell people all the time, I'm like, hey, look, the house my mom and dad separately grew up in, both of those are occupied by people they don't know. So
Mm-hmm.
what makes you think that the dream home that you take your whole entire life to build is going to be occupied by someone you know after you die, or just the reality of it, right? My grandparents, where they grew up, in my grandmother in Jamaica, where she grew up, who knows where she lives? Who knows who lives in that? You know what I mean? Like, but the reality behind is but that was somebody else's home, right? That was somebody else's dream.
Mm-hmm.
That was somebody else's, mindset. That's somebody else's idea. Because a room, this room that I'm in, all of this is an idea. Somebody else's mind had to like draw it and like put it together. So imagine now, 50 years from now, the thing that you worked your whole entire life for, spend 30 years paying back the bank, not even know who you paying, that now goes to somebody else that doesn't even care whose idea it was, how it looks, anything like that. They just want a home. So you work your whole entire life for something, but there's no value to that.
Yeah, that is definitely something to think about. There's so many layers to that perspective that allows us to go further into understanding the power and, most importantly, the purpose of the investments that we have in mind. Have we really thought about it? What is the value that it brings? We have a comment here from YouTube. So someone mentions that, it ages, the home ages, you have to keep up with the maintenance, that sort of thing. And
Oh, and
then,
the roof go in.
natural
So hey,
disasters.
if somebody says, hey, I make X amount of dollars on a home because I Airbnb it or I do this and that and X, and you paying off a mortgage, you keeping a small margin on top of that percentage after paying off the mortgage, and then in year 6 the roof go in, insurance don't cover it. That's 50 grand. All the stuff that you just made was just now irrelevant. All the money that you just made was now irrelevant, and that can happen at any point. So we don't necessarily look at that. We kind of just go base off this whole entire thing that, oh, I'm making an investment and I'm making money from this investment and all this other stuff. When in reality, behind it, it's just like that's not necessarily how it works. Now it may work for someone, right? But I tell people all the time, I'm like, okay, that $100,000, right? What if $100,000 back then could have started Kelly's, right?
Mhm.
Would home being a better investment or starting Kelly's as you know what Kelly's is today? Not saying that necessarily that it's whatever, but I'm just saying like what would have been a better investment? Maybe Kelly's can make you 3 million a year, but the home has only made $400,000, and you're not counting in the fact that all that's inflation and all. I don't want to go into the deepness of inflation and how and all that, but you're not cutting into you're not putting that into aspect of, hey, this is the reason for X, right? So I think people got to see it, for what it is. A lot of times people don't actually understand, um, like you say, we don't understand money, and money itself is something that is very difficult to get to be understood. But money, when understood, is very easy to acquire.
I like that. And you've really focused on the educational aspect of it, which is very important. And so I can imagine that that is a huge aspect of Prosper's approach, because we do live in a society that is really not aware of all of the parameters around all of this. Just being able to
Mhm.
kind of understand, like, where can my money go? It can truly expand. There are other forms of investment. What are some of the ways that Prosper is connecting with the community to ensure that they understand that this is a part of the way to go? Your money can go far. You can acquire more money, as you stated.
So we're interestingly enough, we're in like this like pretty niche area right now where we're kind of pivoting, right? Which is two things. Education, our educational approach, we're focused now on and that younger people need to kind of get into the world of understanding this thing young so they get benefit a lot later on in life.
Yeah.
And the second thing would be we understand too that a big part of our target audience does not want to go and figure out what stocks to buy. So we're kind of getting into the easy like wealth management side of things now,
Mm-hmm.
being able to kind of give advice, and we're going down that route and we're pivoting, getting licensed and all that stuff to do that, so that we can give advice, that we can go down a path where we can help people be able to invest easier, um, building out custom portfolios for people. And those portfolios change as they get closer to retirement.
Nice.
Um, but we're definitely going down that path because we want people to be able to either A, if you want to learn it, go ahead and learn it, and that's available. Or B, if you don't want to, then we'll help you alongside the journey and we'll make sure that you're good. And then the next thing is making sure that we're, getting into the schooling systems, getting around kids, being able
Mm-hmm.
to provide financial literacy, adulting education, how to maximize, like we're focused. I'm a very heavily focused education person. Like
Love
one
it.
of the things that I want to, deal with when it comes to say high school is talking about like how to maximize your opportunities in school. A lot of times too, if we knew better then, like I just spoke to a group of high school students and I was telling them that, that little feeling that you get when the bell rings at 2:55, and how relieved you are and all the dopamine that runs through your body quickly. I'm
Oh
like,
yeah.
when you graduate school, that never happens again. Like that's gone. Like that feeling you remember for the rest of your life, but it will never happen again. Like high school is probably the best days of your life. Enjoy it as much as you can. But if they knew how to maximize their environment and what they had going on, during those years, then it would change. Because I built myself in high school, and I took me until I was like 20, because I'm now 25. So it took me till I was 20 to kind of figure out, okay, this is how I got confidence from this, and this. This is where I learned the skill of speaking from here, and here. Me being a class clown helped me with this. Not saying that everybody should go and do that. Me taking risks helped me with this. So I broke it down. Math is not algebra and this, and this. Math is teaching you how to solve problems. Don't look at math as algebra. School, hate your teachers. Look at math as when you get in life, you have a problem in front of you. Math is just telling you, take that big problem, put it into simpler problems, and solve each problem to solve the bigger problem.
Nice.
Simply that, right? So, but be overcomplicated and say algebra, this, that, the next. But the
Trigonometry.
reality behind,
Ooh.
yeah, all x to solve equals this, isn't it? No, math is just, I go to math because I'm training my brain to understand that here's different strategies to break down different problems, right? Like, and I think that if we can get into schooling systems and we can teach young kids that, hey, here's what these things actually mean, here's why you should
Mhm.
care. I would have looked at school a lot differently if I understood, my teacher shouting at me because I'm not interested in this just means something completely different, or because I'm not here to learn about math. I'm here to learn how to solve problems. And those skills help me a lot later on in life. So my whole entire thing is being able to get into those environments and make a little difference and kind of talk about, each thing and everything like that.
Love, love, love it. Listen, I have a young nephew, and I got super excited when I went to a college fair, and there was this lady. She really believes in financial education from the ground up, you know, starting from young. And I just kept talking about him, and I just knew that this would be something that he would appreciate. He's 8. You know, most people think that you just give kids money, they just want to spend it on like pizza, candy, soda, things like that. But he really wanted to know how to manage his money. He has his piggy
Hmm.
bank, you know, he puts his little coins in, his little dollar bills and things like that. And the thing is, he has such an active mind, and he knows what he wants. Yes, I'm sure it's bound to change. You know, sometimes kids have the craziest ideas of like what they want to
Yeah,
do and who they want to be. But the fact of the matter that you understand that about kids and you want to invest in that and you want to encourage that, because sometimes for children, getting this type of information changes their lives. They
yeah,
feel seen. They feel like someone understands that I like this kind of stuff. I don't feel weird anymore. I don't feel like a nerd, like I'm just too smart, you know, like someone gets me. So I appreciate the fact that you would do that for them. You see the value of that. And then also for adult learners, hey, it's never too old to learn. And I really appreciate the succession planning, because there are people out there, we want to invest, really don't know the first place to start. You know, we're just
mm,
like, you just pick the stocks for me. I trust you. Talk to me about it, but you still pick it, you know, and
yeah,
I'm on board. But if you left it up to them to just kind of like learn and then figure it out, they'll never invest.
yeah. So we definitely want to add that in, and I would definitely say, I would definitely say to that, like when you mention your nephew, right? Like for me personally, um, I I today at 25, I'm living the dream of 12-year-old me. So I wanted my own the business that I have now. I actually wanted, and I would tell my parents that this is what I wanted to do when I was 12, right? So like, I didn't want to be accountant, I didn't want to be this, I didn't want to be that. That's what people throw on you. But I was like, I want to own my own firm one day. Like, I want to
There
be able
you
to do
go.
this, this, and this. So, um, I think for me, and you know, it's so interesting. I spent a lot of time talking to a lot of students in grade 10, 11, and 12, and I want to go down a little bit more, but they're obviously the easiest group of students to talk to right now, and they're making these decisions as they're going out. I could say that 80% of kids that I speak to, 80, literally 80%, they're not doing in life what they want to do, and their parents don't believe in what they want to do.
Mm,
And it's so interesting because they may not tell their parents like, "Hey, I want to do this." Like, I can never forget there was this one guy, and he was just like, "I want to be a barber," right?
okay.
Like, and he's like his parents are not having it. They'd spent all this money to send him to school and this and that. I told him, I'm like, "Babe, like I know, I think 3 barbers right now in America that all are multimillionaires, like own multiple barbershops, right? Like, and it's never too small. And I try to get like people to understand that the Bahamas, you have to be able to understand what your strengths are at home. You live in the best places possible, you bank in the best places possible, and you make money in the best places possible. You're Bahamian, but you have access to the whole entire world, right?
Mm,
But it's about educating our people to understand that, because when we don't say anything when some person comes from the States or Germany or parts of Europe or France or wherever or the UK here and make millions of dollars. We don't say anything about it. We just happily go and work for these people. But there's no difference if we were to go the out way, where it's Bahamians going to these places and making millions of dollars and bringing back, the knowledge, the perspective, the culture from these different places back home. So if we change the mindset, whereas, you have access to the world doesn't just only have access to you, tourism, tourism, tourism. If we
mm.
change that whole entire thing that we paint, then, the country itself would probably be a much different environment, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. We actually have two sets of comments
Hmm.
connected to what you stated. So, the first, I wanted to say that there were persons when they saw our flyer, they were excited. They're like, I have to join. I know him. I know about Prospuh, or I know his name. And they were
Yeah.
on board. So, one of them is India. So, she made it.
Hmm.
I was so excited. She joins
Oh.
us on YouTube. And so she is sharing her story in connection to how you said that this was your childhood dream. So
Hmm.
she said, I found a journal when I was 10, and I said I wanted to be a mythologist, not even knowing what that was at the time. Now I'm getting my master's in astrology. Funny how we know.
Yeah, it's a crazy thing because people don't actually you say things, but people don't see how important it is when you're young, and you could kind of tell what you want your future self to be involved in, right? And one of the things I said to the group of kids is like one of the things that we get lied to about in our environment is like follow your passion. I'm not a big person on passion. I think passion follows your strengths, right? And I gave them this analogy. I said, if I, so me personally, I'm 6'5", right? So
Mm-hmm.
I use it because they all understand it, right? I'm like, hey, let's just say I'm 6'5". I am the first draft pick to go off to the league, and I'm going to get the highest contract in the like for rookies, right? My rookie year. I'm projected to make millions of dollars, but if I don't get injured, I'm going to get a max contract with 200 something million dollars, right?
Okay.
Um, but my passion is art, right? Pottery. My passion is pottery, making pots. Um, would it make sense for me to say screw basketball and kind of go towards pots? Or would it make sense for me to focus on basketball and a year from now open up a whole entire pottery studio, and when off season comes I go and do my passion? So I tell people, you follow
Mm-hmm.
your strengths, you lean on your strengths, and you allow your strengths to open up a path for your passion or create a road for your passion. It's two different things. You don't go down this one road and then because we get pushed into that, like, oh, my passion is this, but yeah, but what are you strong about? Like, what are you strong with? What are your skills? What are you good at? You follow that, and then your passion follows that thing. So I tell young people that all the time as well. So definitely, if you are good at something when you're young and you know what you really want, if that's your strength, you go after it.
Awesome. I love that ending. That's really going to be so inspiring to anyone who's listening right now at any age, because sometimes we kind of put this timestamp on our dreams and our visions when in actuality there is none. It's really based on our own perspective. So thank you for sharing that. And so our next comment was really about the mindset of Bahamians when it comes to investing. And so
Mhm.
we have AC. He says, also because it seems like Bahamians need a workaround to invest in the US stock market unless they find a firm or app like yours that accepts Bahamian investors. Let's talk about the truth of that.
We don't need a workaround. You just need a broker. I mean, to invest in any type of stocks, you need a broker. You can't legally invest in stocks as a individual. You would have to invest through a broker. So in most cases, because we are not tax citizens, it's very difficult for us to go through a US broker. That's like
Mhm.
opening up a US bank account. The problem is there because we are a non-tax jurisdiction. What stops Bob from the US from bringing over $5,000, $10,000 every single month in cash, giving it to AC, and then telling AC to go invest in the US stock market for him, right? There needs to be some level of, hey, there's some restrictions here, there's proper AML, there's proper KYC on each person. So, each environment, our environment, especially being a non-tax jurisdiction, is a very difficult environment. Also, not just non-tax, but then we also have exchange control. So it is a very hard environment to navigate. But the brokers here, they're brokers that are like our company. There are other brokers in the country, I mean. Um, they're just extremely expensive. So, I mean, there's different places you can go depending on what your wallet is and what you have the appetite for. But you definitely have to go through a broker or type of relationship in our environment, and that has traditionally made it very difficult. That's why we wanted to make it extremely easy for people to invest.
Mhm.
Um, Mainly me. I wanted to invest as well myself. So, it's something that I made for myself and others, right? Like, why go and, make somebody else that's not even most cases in our environment, sorry, in our environment, most cases, the person's not from this country. Why
Mhm.
go and, invest through their platforms with their minimum $25,000 requirements and all this other stuff and their high fees when I could just build it for myself and my people to give access to this with less headache, right? So that's kind of how I look at everything.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. So we are fired up right now. How can we get on the Prosper app, start building our wealth, understanding investment? What can we do?
So by the end of this week, we'll have some new features out that makes investing a lot more easier. But I mean, if you have a Android phone, if you have Apple phone, you can just search up Prosper on any Play Store or App Store, and literally just what's on my shirt here, Prosper, spelled like this. Um, you can search it up on any of the stores, and it's a simple. And then you can go to our Instagram, which is this once again this on Instagram, and there's a pinned video that shows you exactly how to create your account and what steps you would have to go through as a Bahamian.
Mhm.
It's fairly simple. It's probably about like 3 to 4 minutes. There's a lot of KYC, like in terms of like it's very strong. So things have to match. We're very I guess dialed in compliance wise on who we, accept onto the platform. So we do go through a process there, but it takes you about 3 to 4 minutes. Then you get verified. If you pass everything, and from there you're able to deposit right away and start investing um, in a matter of minutes. So, and the thing is, you have to withdraw money back to an account in your passport name and in the Bahamas.
Okay.
Um, and, we make it very easy to start investing, I guess. It's not a difficult process.
Excellent. So, India, you already have you have a new signee. India has just downloaded.
I have not seen Indian forever. We did not go to the same school, but we were in the same grade.
Oh, nice. Okay. So she has a question. Can you use the app as a non-Bahamian as well, or is it exclusively for Bahamians?
Yeah, you can as a non-Bahamian. You just can't be from Canada.
Okay.
Canada
Oh,
has their own like rules.
okay.
Yeah, they have their own rules and laws and stuff like that in Canada, which, you know, so
All right. No problem. Uh, okay, I can see India threw a bit of a jab there. So Prosper, and then thank you so much. You have truly provided a refreshing perspective when it comes to wealth and investing, really understanding what it means to be wealthy, changing our minds on what does that mean to us, understanding that we can be wealthy right now without money, also knowing that we do have this digital access to stocks and other forms of investment. We can invest outside of real estate and it can still be worthwhile. And also for believing in the youth of the Bahamas and wanting to take on that challenge of the mindset that we have here, changing that, helping young persons to embrace that, and understanding that there is so much value in starting with them young. You have truly given us you have truly given us a lot to think about. So of course, we want to know what are your next steps? How can we support you? We want to do what we can to support the Prosper mission.
um next steps. I mean, like I like to say this a lot because I look at a long-term thing and I want to make sure that people understand that we are, building the product for generations to come as well, right? So at 25, my goal is to spend the next 20 years like in our environment, pushing on people being able to grow their wealth in terms of financially, right? So I think that that's my main goal for the next 20 years is being able to create an environment that challenges all the financial systems that we currently have in place and being able to provide access to financial products that Bahamians have never had access to before. And at the same time, too, being able to include Bahamians in things that can give them great access to being able to make money, right? Like, so being able to provide them access to private equity, venture capitalists, deals, real estate deals, like deal flow straight across the board. So being able to now, you know, show them things and teach them things that they may have never known about before. So my thing is that, and I think that the best way to be a part of it is just, you know, not even necessarily talking about Prosper, but just speaking to people about investing, people speaking to people about buying back their own time, understanding equity, understanding
Mm,
why it's important to, you know, prepare for your future.
yes,
Um, and also be in an environment where you have good things for yourself, have investments for yourself, have investments for your kids. Doesn't have to be Prosper, doesn't have to be any firm name. I think when people look at someone like me, we get in this environment where everyone's competing. I don't
mm,
look at other companies and look at competition. I look at other companies and I look at collaborators, right?
yes.
Because I've been an athlete my whole entire life. I know when I hop in the pool, I going to go break a racket. What y'all doing? That's
We
cool.
don't
Like,
know.
yeah. So I told somebody the other day. I said, my perspective on a lot of things is just the same perspective I had when I did my races, which was you could, if you carry out your race going slow and being behind, you probably, if something happens to you, you're probably gonna come last. But if you carry out your race going as hard as you can, I say y'all got to catch me. At least, and if y'all catch me, at least I ain't coming last. You know, so the reality behind it is being able to stay up front and provide different solutions for people while having everybody understand that that person that's next to you, the person at the dinner table with you, the person that are your friends or on social media, if you just start talking to people about these things, in 50 years, we may not have a country where um, somebody wants to kill somebody over a dollar. We'll have a country where it's more like Dubai, where everybody's wealthy, where everybody understands, and we could do it. We're so small, right? Um, and you have countries like this in the Caribbean where everybody on the island is just generally just wealthy or has a great life. So I think we aim for a future where everything is better than aiming for a future where there's a huge wealth gap.
Yes.
So that's kind of my thing. So just talk about it, just have conversations.
Yeah, I agree. I think with conversations, that's where everything starts. And you find yourself with like minded people, and you start to believe, like, hey, this vision that we have, we can really do this. But if you never start the conversation, you'll never know.
Yeah, that's true. So that's the only thing that I would add in there for if anybody wants to support it. Um, I can't ask somebody to directly do anything, right? But I can definitely tell people that it's important to understand the now, right? It's
Yes.
important to, I wish I could tell more young people to invest, like 18, 20s. We see more that 30s and 40s are investing, right?
Hmm.
But the reality behind it is the same thing like life insurance, I guess, which is just buying investments anyway that they do. Is it's so much cheaper to start investing younger than it is to start investing as you get progressively older, right?
Yeah.
So the earlier you start, the better it is for you. Whatever it is that you're purchasing, if even if it's just a dividend stock or even if it's just the S&P 500 or if it's anything, the earlier you start, the better it is. So I think that that's something that a lot of people have to get a better understanding on. So
Absolutely. Yeah. And one of the good things with India's example is you can actually start investing in things that you love. You know, you talked about basically having access to global investment opportunities. So we think about sometimes our favorite franchises when it comes to either sports, food, tech, anything. This is something that we can get funds from and really feel the benefit of investing. Because, you know, once you get that at the start, it kind of keeps you going. You learn more about how investment works and it can really come together.
that's true. And I tell people all the time, I see it day in, day out. One of the things that I like started investing in heavily recently, um, yes, we shall. One of the things that I started doing a lot recently is like investing into like psychedelic companies. Although I don't do
Hmm.
psychedelics myself, but like the wave of cannabis is now gone and the new wave of psychedelics is like here now. So I tell people all the time, like, that's not financial advice, by the way. But it's something that I do because I find it like a unique opportunity. And I remember being 14, 15, 16 when cannabis kind of just started to come around, and then 17, 18 when the stocks just started to like IPO. And met so much people in America that were like, "Oh yeah, I made like $10 million off of cannabis stocks. I purchased $10,000." So I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna make sure that I'm on the psychedelics wave before any of that, you know. So yeah, and then you have people that use the platform that are like penny stock traders that are like, you know, you see some interesting things. Like I've seen, you know, we've seen some of our investors invest in some penny stocks and have done exceptionally well with like $100, $200. So I'm like, anything is possible. It's just what you choose to invest in, what you believe in, why you believe in it, what you want to use the platform for, type of situation. So I think that's, you know, we try to set this thing, our whole entire slogan is putting equity in the hands of the people. That's all we care about.
Yes.
So,
Absolutely. Yeah. And I sense that throughout the conversation, that it is truly something that you believe in, that you're focused on, and that you want Bahamians throughout, not just here, but throughout the Caribbean to experience. And that's such a beautiful, beautiful thing.
yeah. But I definitely appreciate the opportunity for sure to kind of voice um, my thoughts essentially, and kind of get out there. And I always say, or I used to say when I had a podcast, if even one person is listening and taking and understanding what I'm saying,
Hmm.
that's me being able to move forward in with my purposes in life. So I definitely appreciate the opportunity to like speak and get my thoughts out there and kind of get them, I guess, hopefully, um, someone to say, hey, you know what, I'm going to start investing tonight and kind of move forward in that path. 10 years from now, it'll make a difference, right? Like,
Hmm.
so I think that that's kind of like the where my appreciation comes from.
You're very welcome. I love the entire message that you shared. It's going to be so informative for so many people. I know that there are persons that are constantly looking for ways to invest, and now knowing that there is something here locally made, locally inspired that still connects you with the world, like how can you resist that? And then, of course, knowing that there's education and there's going to be a portfolio set for me, it just makes it so much easier. And so I thank you for just being here and being open with us and even giving us that little tip, following trends. That's a huge part of investing, understanding the different markets, knowing when to jump in, knowing when to jump out. There's a bit of a science to it, but you can get it. And so I like how you mentioned that so that people realize that this is layered. We like to see things on the surface. As you stated, when it comes sometimes to real estate, like, okay, this looks nice. Let me just get it without realizing all of the other aspects. So it's good
Hmm.
to keep that in mind when it comes to investing. So, and I really, really appreciate how one of the key things you mentioned was the power of being an investor. And I think that that is certainly something that we can walk away with, get our minds going, our gears going. As he stated, you can go to your Play Store or your App Store on your mobile phones. Follow Prospuh on Instagram. Show your love, show your support, and watch that video. Get some information. It's all about understanding. And as he stated, there's a lot of education that's going to be coming out of the woodworks, and your kids can be a part of this too, and hopefully your kids. This is the kind of thing that we want to keep the conversation going on. We do have one more question, if you're okay with that.
Hmm.
And so AC asks, should dual or green card holders use their Bahamian credentials or US on Prosper?
I would say Bahamian, but I would also just inform you that you won't be able to sign up unless you sign the W-8 Ben form. So if you make money in the US, then you probably don't want to do that. You should just use whatever option is available to you in the United States. If you pay taxes in the US, that is. It's more or less, I guess, because you have so many options in the US, it's a lot different, right? Um,
Mhm.
so if you pay taxes, then That's completely different now. So I don't advise people that pay taxes in the US to do so. Just probably want to use one of those things that are plugged into the US tax system. That's what I don't understand. I say all the time, I don't, people think that the American dream and living in America is better than home. But so much people, and America is actually the only place in the world that wherever you go in the world, they still tax.
Hmm.
So, but I don't know. It's interesting because now I deal with clients from everywhere now. So, but yeah, but no, I wouldn't suggest because you have to sign the W-8 band form when you're signing up, and the US does know.
Okay,
So,
great. Thank you. Thank you for that. So, AC, you got your answer. That's going to help you with signing up. And then it's been an absolute pleasure. I thank you so much for bringing this innovative way for Bahamians to invest in themselves, their future, and create equity and wealth. If you are just tuning in, you can watch the full replay on both YouTube and Facebook. Leave your comments and questions. I will be sure to get them to an end. I want to give another shout out to our sponsor, Amber L. And I invite you to join me next week for another episode of Vibration, where we raise your frequency and amplify your truth. Bye, everyone.